Good day, Crime Talk aficionados. Guess what? It's Sunday, and we have the week in review of all the top stories that we covered beginning from May 27th because of the holiday, all conveniently located in one location. Hope you enjoy the show. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. We'll see you next week. And remember, the Constitution matters.
All right, lawyer.
This story has been out here for a little bit. We really haven't covered it at all because, frankly, you can't make a case for it either way because, well, there's not enough information. We don't know. All right. Nothing's come out in court filings, but the reality of it is it's out there. And so we're going to discuss it. You can decide. So the alleged connection between Bryan Kohberger, obviously the suspect in the University of Idaho murders, and the online alias of a person by the name of Papa Roger has sparked significant debate, primarily, in the online community that likes true crime. And there's even been, for example, an FBI agent that has touted this theory quite heavily. Now, let's go through a little bit of an examination for the reasons supporting and opposing the theory that Bryan Kohberger was behind the Papa Roger alias. So the reasons supporting this theory that Bryan Kohberger is Papa Roger. First, details about the knife sheath. On November 30th, 2022, Papa Roger posted in the University of Idaho murder case discussion Facebook group stating, of the evidence released, the murder weapon has been consistent as a large fixed blade knife. This leads me to believe they found the sheath. This evidence was released prior to autopsies, and this comment was made before the police publicly confirmed the discovery of the K-bar knife sheath and at the crime scene, which later became a critical piece of evidence due to the DNA found on it. Now, the accuracy of that prediction raised suspicion that Papa Roger had inside knowledge, possibly as the perpetrator. Now, let's take a look at the crime scene timeline. All right. Now, Papa Roger made other specific claims, such as the killer entering through a sliding glass door, the approximate time of the murders, 3:20 to 3:40 a.m., and the killer's vehicle leaving skid marks. These details align closely with the information later released in the probable cause affidavit, which detailed Kohberger's movements and the presence of a white Hyundai Elantra. Then we have the similarity to Kohberger's academic work. Online sleuths and former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer noted similarities between Papa Roger's posts and a Reddit survey Kohberger conducted as a student at DeSalle University. The survey asked criminals about their emotions and decision-making during the crimes, using a matter-of-fact tone and specific phrasing that some argue mirrored Papa Roger's post. For example, both used precise analytical language when discussing crime details, leading to speculation that Kohberger's criminology background informed his online activity. Now, the group administrator reported that the Papa Rogers was argumentative, often engaging in heated debates and insisting on the accuracy of his claims. This behavior was perceived as consistent with reports of Kohberger's personality, described by some as needing to be right and very authoritative, aligning with the academic focus on criminology. And then we have some of the suspicious timing that takes place. So, silence after the arrest. Now, Papa Roger was highly active in Facebook group until December 29th, 2022, when the account was removed from the group at 7:10 p.m. the evening before Kohberger's arrest on December 30th. The account then went silent, which some interpret as evidence that the user was Kohberger, who was taken into custody and could no longer post. Now, Christine Cameron, a group administrator, noted that Papa Rogers created a new group with 6 members after being removed, but ceased actively post-arrest. Then we have the reactivation timing. So in July of 2023, the Papa Rogers account briefly reactivated, posting about unrelated topics like a fishing trip and the Carmel School Board. Some speculated this could be Kohberger's defense team attempting to create a reasonable doubt, or that an impersonator, but others saw the long dormancy followed by reactivation as suspicious, potentially indicating controlled access, such as through a monitored tablet, possibly in jail. And then the Papa Rogers account used an AI-generated image of a soldier in Russian military uniform, which some believe resembled Kohberger's side profile. clearly aged. This led to theories that Kohberger chose an image to obscure his identity while subtly reflecting himself. Then the connection to Elliot Rodger. Some online users, including a forensic expert cited in reports, suggested that the name Papa Rogers referenced Elliot Rodger, the 2014 Isla Vista killer who identified as an insult, involuntarily celibate. This connection was seen as plausible given Kohberger's criminology studies, which likely covered high-profile cases like Rogers, and speculation that Kohberger may have shared similar psychological traits. The theory persists, and Kohberger chose the name to align himself with Rogers' ideology or notoriety. And then, like I said, we have the former FBI agent Jennifer Kofendaffer, a retired FBI agent, actively supported the theory, citing the accuracy of Papa Rogers' posts and their alignment with Kohberger's criminology expertise. She tweeted, quote, "I have followed Papa Roger comments with intrigue. This comment was of particular interest after the release of the probable cause affidavit. The comment just seems to hit home." She also suggested Kohberger's sloppy execution of the crime, example, leaving the DNA, using his own car, made it plausible he would leave a digital trail. Now, some believe Kohberger also used the Reddit handle Inside Looking, which posted similar accurate details about the murders, such as the killer's entry through a sliding door and the significance of the white Hyundai Elantra. While not definitively linked, the overlap is detailed knowledge between the two accounts fueled speculation that Kohberger used multiple pseudonyms or to monitor or influence discussions. Now, of course, that's the theory as to why that could possibly be Bryan Kohberger as Papa Roger. Now let's go to why it could be that it is not. So the first theory that Kohberger is Papa Roger obviously lacks any official confirmation. No law enforcement agencies, including the Moscow Police Department or the FBI, have confirmed a link between Kohberger and the Papa Roger account. Despite a search warrant served on Meta, obviously Facebook, with the results sealed by the court, no public evidence that has tied Kohberger to this account. This absence of concrete proof is a significant barrier to accepting that theory. Then we have the accurate predictions. Now, common deductions. Some argue that Papa Roger's predictions, such as the presence of a knife sheath, were logical deductions based upon public information. Police had disclosed early on that the bladed weapon was used, and a sheath is a common accessory for the fixed blade knife. Other details like the timeline or entry point could have been inferred from the news report or general knowledge of the crime scene analysis. Then we have posts on X and Reddit suggest that other users also speculated about a sheath or a similar details before officials confirmed, reducing the uniqueness of Papa Roger's claims. For example, a user on X noted that others like Blanca made early accurate predictions suggesting Papa Roger was not uniquely informed. Then we have the reactivation of the Papa Rogers account in July of 2023 while he was in custody undermines this theory. Posts about unrelated topics such as fishing trips led some to conclude the account belonged to someone else, possibly an impersonator or a user like JLR Investigates, a former fraud felon known to true crime content. These suggest that the original account may have not even been Bryan Kohberger's. And then, obviously, it's speculative. The theory relies heavily on unverified online posts and screenshots, which are prone to manipulation or misinterpretation. For instance, Reddit moderators reportedly debunked the inside-looking connection, suggesting similar skepticism could apply to Papa Roger. The lack of direct access to the accounts, metadata, or login records make it difficult to confirm ownership. And then some speculate that Papa Rogers could be a deep cover investigator, a retired police officer, or a true crime enthusiast with access to insider information. The account's reactivation and shift to mundane topics supports this idea that it belongs to somebody uninvolved in the crime, possibly exploiting the case notoriety. Now, critics have argued that Kohberger, as a criminology PhD student, would likely avoid posting incriminating details online, especially given the awareness of the digital forensics. His alleged efforts to conceal his actions, for example, turn off his phone, allegedly, contrast with the reckless behavior of Papa Rogers, who drew attention by arguing and posting specific details. This discrepancy suggests the account may belong to someone less cautious or potentially uninvolved. And then, of course, after Papa Roger gained attention, multiple accounts with similar names and profile pictures appeared on Facebook, indicating possible copycats. This complicates efforts to link the original account to Kohberger, as the viral nature of the theory may have prompted others to mimic the account for attention or to mislead investigators. Then we have to deal with the fact that social media posts, even if suggestive, are unlikely to meet the evidentiary threshold for court unless corroborated by metadata, for example, IP addresses or other forensic evidence. The prosecution has focused on physical evidence, for example, the DNA, the cell phone data, surveillance footage, rather than speculative online activity, suggesting that the Papa Roger connection may be completely irrelevant to the case. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. The theory that Bryan Kohberger is Papa Roger is supported by the account's early accurate predictions, similarities to Kohberger's academic work, and the suspicious timing of its silence after his arrest. These factors, combined with the endorsement from a former FBI agent and Kohberger's criminology background, obviously have fueled speculation that he used the alias to engage with or manipulate discussions about the murder. However, the lack of official confirmation, the account's reactivation, and plausible alternative explanations, for example, the logical deductions, impersonation, or another user, cast significant doubt on the theory. The absence of concrete forensic evidence linking Kohberger to the account and the speculative nature of online discussions means the connection remains unproven and is treated as inconclusive, particularly by the police authorities. So there you have it. You decide, ladies and gentlemen. I don't think it's him. And even if it was, how do you prove it? Unless there's something that has not been made public that would link Bryan Kohberger to that. I just don't think he would be that stupid, given what he knows about the forensic trail that follows somebody. But you never know. That's why people get caught. They make mistakes. Now, obviously, Bryan Kohberger is given the presumption of innocence, and we will give him that unless and until he either A, pleads guilty, or B, is convicted by a jury of his peers. Now, next on a little more Bryan Kohberger news, the mother of one of the 4 University of Idaho students murdered is now asking for financial help to attend the trial. Obviously, Kohberger is accused of murdering Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Gonzalez, who were obviously all stabbed to death. Now, a friend of Xana's mom, Kara Northington, started a GoFundMe to make sure Kara can make the 400-mile trip from northern Idaho, where she lives, to Boise, where the trial is expected, obviously, to take place this summer, pending, of course, the motion to continue filed by the defense. Now, the trial is expected to last 3 months, and apparently they're looking to raise a paltry $50,000. Those funds will cover all of Kara's expenses as she takes off from work and relocates from northern Idaho to Boise during the duration of the trial. But just to be clear, Kaylee Gonzalez's family has also set up a GoFundMe so that they can attend the trial. Madison Mogen's family has a GoFundMe to help attend the trial as well. Now, the jury selection is scheduled to begin July 30th. Obviously, depending on whether the motion to continue filed by the defense is granted. Now, I don't know how things are done in Idaho as it relates to victim witness, but I can tell you here, normally the family, they would be put up in a hotel. They would be flown or, paid a stipend to show up. And that would be for the entire trial. The state would do that. So I'm not sure why they need this GoFundMe other than maybe to pay for their other bills and expenses while they're not working. But that's usually the way it works. The prosecution through the victim advocate's office picks up the bill. Next on the docket, Sean Diddy Combs. The sex trafficking and racketeering trial intensifies in its now 3rd week. The trial of Sean Diddy Combs, now in its 3rd week at a Manhattan federal courthouse in New York City, continues to captivate public attention with explosive testimony and dramatic courtroom developments. Now, the music mogul faces charges of racketeering conspiracy, 2 counts of sex trafficking, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. He's also accused of orchestrating a criminal enterprise to fulfill his sexual desires through coercion and abuse. Now, Combs has denied all of the allegations, and his defense admitted, hey, There may be a little domestic violence in there, but that doesn't mean we're involved in sex trafficking or racketeering. Let's be for real. Anyway, some of the key testimony and witnesses jurors have heard from over the dozen witnesses include Combs' ex-girlfriend and primary accuser, Cassie Ventura, former bandmate Don Richard, rapper Kid Cudi or Cudi, C-U-D-I, doesn't really matter, and ex-assistant Capricorn Clark, and prosecutors have centered much of their case on allegations that Combs physically and sexually abused Ventura for years, coercing her into sexual encounters known as freak-offs with men who paid thousands of dollars to participate. Testimony from Ventura and others has painted a picture of a controlling and very threatening environment, with stylist Deontay Nash recounting a 2014 incident at the Vanity Fair Oscar party where Combs allegedly assaulted him over Ventura's hairstyle, only to later retract his criticism. Now, Nash, who worked with Combs and Ventura from 2008 to 2018, testified reluctantly, detailing threats Combs allegedly made against Ventura, including withholding her music releases, threatening her parents, jobs, and distributing explicit videos to their workplaces. Meanwhile, Clark's testimony included claims of being kidnapped twice by Combs or his associates, though her account of a 2011 incident involving Kid Cudi was contradicted by LAPD officer Ignacio, who denied witnessing a car chase she described. Now, the rapper's car bombing allegation was a significant focus and has been the January 2012 arson incident involving Kid Cudi's Porsche, which Cudi attributes to Combs as retaliation for his relationship with Ventura. Now, the LA Fire Department arson specialist Lance Jimenez testified about finding a Molotov cocktail, a 40-ounce malt liquor bottle filled with gasoline in the vehicle, which caused minimal damage compared to typical arson cases. Jimenez noted that a fully ignited device could have set the entire home on fire. Photographs presented to the jury showed the car's charred interior and a hole in the convertible roof, supported by the testimony that the explosive was inserted deliberately. Now, the defense also sought a mistrial. The attorneys moved for a mistrial after prosecutors questioned Jimenez about destroyed fingerprint evidence from the arson case. The defense argued that the prosecution's line of questioning implied Combs' involvement in the evidence destruction, which Jimenez attributed to the LAPD authorization in August of 2022, calling the suggestion outrageous. The defense claimed it prejudiced the jury. However, the judge denied the mistrial motion, allowing the trial to proceed. Now, despite the gravity of charges, Mr. Combs has displayed confidence in court, engaging actively with his 9-lawyer team, passing notes, and suggesting evidence based on his personal recollection. Sources described him as the quarterback for his defense, leveraging his intimate knowledge of the events to guide their strategy. His charisma has been evident with gestures like heart signs to the audience, though his behavior has drawn scrutiny amid serious allegations. Now, the trial has also produced a lighter but startling details, such as testimony about Combs' unusual cheeseburger toppings, which reportedly disgusted jurors. These moments, alongside graphic evidence of intimate texts, have fueled public fascination with the trial. Now, ongoing supports. Oh, and just so you know, what is he like on his cheeseburgers? Applesauce. Yeah. Anyway, Combs' mother, Janice, has been a constant present at the courthouse, signaling his support from his family, and her son faces these possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. Now, the racketeering and sex trafficking charges carry a minimum of 15 years in prison, while the prostitution-related charges could add up to another 10 years. Prosecutors allege that Combs used his business empire to facilitate a year-long criminal operation, coercing victims into drug-fueled sex parties and silencing them through threats and violence. Now, Combs maintains that all of these encounters were nothing more than consensual acts of sex. Anyway, the trial is expected to last at least 6 more weeks. We'll bring it to you, ladies and gentlemen. I wish this one was being allowed to be recorded, videoed, so that we could see it. One of these days, the federal courts will finally get on board and say, hey, we've got nothing to hide up here. Let's show the world how it is done. One of these days, federal court, we're waiting for you. All right, next on the docket, the manhunt intensifies for the escaped convict in the Ozark Mountains. That's right, Grant Harden, the now 56-year-old former police chief You heard that correct, ladies and gentlemen. Police chief escaped from the North Central Unit in Calico Rock, Arkansas, back on May 25th of 2025. Now, he was convicted of first-degree murder and he is serving a combined 80-year sentence for the 2017 murder of James Appleton and a 1997 in Rogers, Arkansas. Now, he's known as the Devil in the Ozarks. Now, Hardin's escape has triggered a massive manhunt in the Ozark Mountains. Hardin executed the escape at approximately 2:55 p.m. by impersonating a correctional officer wearing an imitation uniform and adopting the demeanor of prison staff. He exited the medium security facility after a prison officer opened a secure gate without verifying his identity, and Hardin was seen pulling a dolly which appeared fully loaded, aiding in the disguise. Now, the escape was undetected for at least 30 minutes, and authorities announced it publicly 2 hours later. Well, local, state, and federal law enforcement are scouring the Ozark Mountains, focusing on the region's vast forest, abandoned cabins, and nearly 2,000 documented caves. Authorities are using canines, drones, and helicopters to search the cave-dense terrain, which experts described as ideal for concealment. Now, Hardin, familiar with the area's cavern system, is considered extremely dangerous. Like I noted, he has a criminal record for the 2017 murder of this James Appleton, a Gateway Water Department employee, for which he received a 30-year sentence, and the DNA later linked him to a 1997 rape, resulting in an additional 50-year sentence. Now, Hardin's brief law enforcement career included stints at the Fayetteville, Huntsville, Eureka Springs, and Gateway police departments, marked by allegations of excessive force and misconduct. Anyway, residents of the Ozarks are on high alert, with sheriffs urging people to lock their homes and vehicles and report suspicious activity. The escape has drawn a comparison to the manhunt of the bomber Eric Rudolph, who evaded capture for years in similar terrain. Now, locals, including some business owners, say that survivalists with knowledge of the region's caves could hide out, indefinitely. Authorities remain confident, though, that Hardin is still in the area, prioritizing searches of caves and abandoned structures. And the Arkansas Department of Corrections is reviewing security protocols at their facility to prevent future escapes. Good call, Arkansas Department of Corrections. Anyway, the investigations continues to determine how Hardin acquired his disguise and whether he had assistance. Could he be? Maybe any female guards, any female deputies there at the correctional center missing? Yeah, remember the sheriff deputy that gave it all up for the guy on death row, taking him to his doctor's appointment? I think I'd check any romantic relationships there. Anyway, the manhunt for Hardin underscores the challenges of searching the rugged Ozarks, and as police intensify their effort, the community remains vigilant, hoping for swift apprehension of such a dangerous fugitive. I don't know. Obviously, bad man, pled guilty to murder and got two of the big three ones there, right? Two of the three kind of indicator, not a good guy. A little troubling that he was able to work in law enforcement as long as he did. But then on the other hand, you're kind of like, run, Forrest, run. But yeah, go for it. I mean, kind of interesting, you know? I'm sure he'll get a fan page real soon. Women will be wanting to date him. I can see the cycle beginning all over again. Bryan Kohberger. Now, you know, because we've told you, the defense has filed a 40-page motion to continue, citing every reason under the sun why they don't want to go to trial. And I think the judge has made up his mind. Now, remember, the judge has the motions for the alternate suspect. He's seen the motions filed. He's seen a lot of the evidence that the defense says that they haven't had enough time to review. And when pressed at the previous motions hearing, you know, Ms. Taylor basically said, well, Judge, I have to review everything. Well, no, you don't. This case isn't that complicated. Yes, there's so much digital evidence in this particular case. And that's why you have paralegals and you have associates that are going to go through all that information along with investigators and narrow it down to the really relevant stuff that you're supposed to be looking for. In today's modern litigation like that, with a case this size, there's no way an individual attorney could do it all himself. And the judge acknowledged that. Okay. And the prosecutors have noted that, 99% of it is not really relevant to the night in question. So the question, obviously, that we don't know the answer to yet, and, I hate to speculate, but I'm trying to use some years of experience here, that I think the continuance request by the defense is going to be denied. Why? Let me tell you why. The Judge Stephen Hippler, issued an order regarding juror questionnaires for the upcoming Bryan Kohberger trial. Now, just as the court did in the high-profile case of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, the Ada County District Court says it is summoning hundreds to thousands of people to their courthouse to fill out questionnaires. This will happen in the weeks before voir dire, and that's obviously where the jurors are questioned by the attorneys. So the Ada County Deputy Administrative District Judge Jim Cawthorn was asked questions about the process, which will be closed to the public and the jury selection in general. Now, the judge said that after people receive their summons, they'll be brought into the courthouse and will give instructions on how to fill out the questionnaires. They will have ample time to complete it before it's turned over to the jury commissioner. And then the judge, who did not say how long the documents will be, it is currently sealed under court orders. Now, these documents will be copied and sent to the defense, the prosecution, and the judge. And from there, it'll be obvious that some jurors won't be able to sit on the panel as prospective jurors. The judge noted, he said, that people that may be receiving those, that there's a lot of information attached to the summons. And those questionnaires, they think will really be important for prospective jurors to pay attention to and actually read the questions, the kind of information that they need to know, but is also information they need to know about the participants in the particular trial. So when asked if the judge was concerned about pretrial publicity impacting the jury pool there in Ada County, he said he isn't. And what he meant by that is you don't want the type of pretrial publicity that makes the job that's much more difficult or adds concerns that you have in picking that jury. The judge said, am I concerned about the ability to find a jury that will be able to seat a jury? No. This is one in a series of many, whether it's just within this community or the state, that's highly publicized trial that they've had there in Ada County. It may be difficult to find potential jurors who have never heard of this case, but the judge said attorneys need to seat jurors who can be neutral. There's not a favoring the state. They're not favoring the defense. And, you have to have somebody who's going to be able to set aside whatever they thought about this case and say, I can decide it based solely on the evidence presented in the case and not be influenced by some outside factor. That's what the judge said, which we talk about all the time here on Crime Talk. You may have some knowledge generally about the subject matter, or, you've heard generally about what's on trial, or even hold an opinion that may run counter to what's the trial is going to be about, right? But the question is, can you base your decision solely on the evidence in the case and follow the law instructed by the court? That's the legal standard, ladies and gentlemen. You don't get a perfect jury. You don't get a jury that has been completely living under a rock, but you're going to find those people, particularly in larger jurisdictions, that just don't follow this type of news. And so it's not going to be impossible. They'll find a jury. They're going to be people say, yeah, I've heard about it, but I haven't followed it. And I'm willing to make my decision based upon the evidence that's presented in court, and I can follow the court's instructions. Those are the legal standards. So ultimately, 12 jurors will be selected, right? That's required. And 8 alternates will be seated in the Kohberger trial. Now, the judge also noted that the voir dire will begin on August 4th at the courthouse, following by opening statements, which will begin August 11th. The trial expected to last until November. So let's break this down. What this means is they're sending out summons so people can fill out these questionnaires, basically, make sure they have good contact information so they have them returned. The court is not going to inconvenience all of those people and go to the expense of sending out all of these summons for jury duty unless they're going. So I think that's one of the indicators why there's not going to be a continuance. All right. Now, what's going to happen? These people are going to come in. They're going to say, you've been selected. Please fill out the questionnaires, read it carefully. And you're going to find people that say, oh, yeah, Bryan Kohberger's guilty. Boom. All right. They're going to be a big stack. Everybody's going to get a big stack of juror questionnaires. And now remember, normally, if it wasn't a big case like this, you'd get your stack of juror questionnaires. sometimes maybe it's a page or two long at the most, and you get 20 minutes to go through all of the potential juror questionnaires. Here, the defense, the prosecution are going to have more than sufficient time to do that, and they're going to go through, and when they say, I can't be fair and impartial to the prosecution, or the defendant is absolutely guilty, guess what? They're just going to strike those people and say, you don't need to come back. Have a wonderful day. Hope you never need a jury in your life someday, right? So that'll take place. Then they're going to whittle that down to ultimately where they get probably 70 some odd people that are going to be kind of the presumptive panel. They'll put them in, they'll do voir dire, and then they'll go through the process ultimately to do that. But there's going to be a lot of individual questioning of these people based upon these questionnaires. Going to say, well, they didn't really answer that question. Let's bring them in, talk to them in chambers or, outside the presence of everybody else. The defendant will be there, and then you get to hear. And sometimes, you'll develop a secret method. For example, when you go into you go in the back room for chambers when you're talking to jurors, the judge will oftentimes say, all right, let's do the plastic cup method or the marker method. And what that means is when you start questioning that juror in chambers and they start making it very clear that this is not the right jury for them, instead of asking questions that everybody agrees, the defense will put out their little marker, the prosecution will then put out their little marker, and the judge will be like, all right, thank you, juror, 126, we appreciate you. Why don't you step outside and we'll be more than happy to speak to you in just a minute. My clerk will be right out. And they'll say, all right, juror leaves, attorney, judge, and prosecutor are in there. And they say, all right, looks like we have an agreement for cause, right? Yes, no objection, boom. Judge then tells the clerk, go tell juror number 126 or whatever it was, have a nice day. Their service has ended. And so they'll do that with a lot of jurors in chambers. Obviously, not so much in murder cases. You usually do a lot of those in chamber type of issues on sex assault cases because people don't want to talk about that stuff openly, particularly if they've been a victim. And if you've ever been on a sex assault jury, man, I'm telling you, people have no idea. There are so many people out there that have been victims of some sort of sexual abuse, and sex assault trials are so difficult to get jurors because there's so many people that have never reported things, or they have reported things and they either receive justice or they don't receive what they believe to be justice. And so they're very, very difficult cases. Murder cases, not so much. Everybody wants to be in a murder case, right? Everybody wants to be in a murder case trial, jury. But when it's going to take 4 months, that's where it gets a little tough trying to find people, right? So what are we going to get? 12 people, good and true, otherwise unemployable generally. All right. So we're going to get probably older people. Don't think students are going to do it. It's going to be older people. So anyway, that's why I think we're going to have a trial in August.